Hey, what's up, guys? Up here. So today we're going to be once again talking about the historic downfall of Ubisoft. There's been a lot of recent events, including some new ones we're going to cover in this video, including some more bad PR generated by public statements from one of its employees. But ironically, right now we're witnessing a giant spike in Ubisoft's stock, one of the biggest in the company's history. However, that has to do with something entirely different, and that's the fact that it appears Ubisoft is going to be bought out in a desperate attempt to save this company. Now, before we get into the details of that, let's just remind ourselves where we're at with Ubisoft. A lot of people don't really know that 2023 was a disastrous year for Ubisoft. They had around a net loss of $500 million that year. Then we enter 2024, where they've had basically flop after flop after flop, leading to another 50% decrease in their market value, thanks to their absolutely terrible, their nightmare-inducing resume this year, beginning, of course, with Skull and Bones, which was allegedly $850 million to develop, just to end up in the $10 bargain bin at Best Buy a few months later. Then we have Star Wars Outlaws selling just 1 million copies in its first month, a game that presumably took hundreds of millions of dollars to develop. Then we, of course, have the news about Assassin's Creed Shadows. It is now delayed until February of next year. This was basically the last bullet in the chamber for Ubisoft this year, and now it's a part of next year's series of flops. And on top of that, there's rumors out there that this delay isn't even going to be enough. They're going to have to probably delay it even further beyond that February mark, and that's from a stem of rumors that an insider at Ubisoft have been sharing, and that includes many allegations about the workplace environment and how dysfunctional the company is, and how they very clearly, according to this insider, prioritize virtue signaling and politics over creating games that people will enjoy. And that's really where we've left off things recently. Like, for the 100th time, I'm going to say, oh, things can't get worse, and of course it does. And this is the most recent set of drama here, and it begins with Stevie Chazard. So this monetization director at Ubisoft would go onto LinkedIn and share this absolute disaster of a post recently. And of course, it's very ironic that the monetization director is making something that is clearly not in the monetization interest of the company by basically insulting all of their customers and also people within the gaming industry. So let's read this, because I genuinely believe the attitude of this individual represents more people at Ubisoft and really is the reason why they are failing so badly. So he begins by saying, "I rarely post on social media, but today I am sad, ashamed, and sad. The gaming industry is rough at the moment, we all know it, but seeing how, in quotes, gamers react on social medias, wishing ill fate to companies and people alike, is sad, and not only towards Ubisoft. Even though it's always the vocal minority that expresses themselves on social media, I was hurt and ashamed to be a part of this community. What is even more revolting is coming on LinkedIn and seeing the same comments from people within the industry, on top of exposing yourself as a clearly non-decent human being. You are affecting thousands of employers or employees that are already impacted by all of the hate, despite doing their best to deliver incredible experiences. How can you wish a company to fail simply because they do not cater to you or that the product does not please you is beyond me. We are all on the same boat. Please, please, please stop spreading hate. We should all uplift each other instead of bringing each other down." Holy soy. Like, first of all, are you okay, Stevie? Like, dude, invest in a journal, not, basically spilling your guts out on social media, because this stuff will be weaponized against you. You're basically shaming your potential customers and gamers in general by saying all these awful things. On the one hand, you also act like there's this horde of angry gamers that are just going out there for blood. But then in the next statement, you say they're the vocal minority. So what are they exactly? You're trying to downplay it. Well, clearly they're not the vocal minority. They are the majority, because everything coming out of Ubisoft this year is flopping extremely hard. So clearly there's some merit to what these gamers are saying and their criticisms that they're providing for you. And this sort of like coddling and participation trophy type attitude here. Like, yes, these people might be doing their best. But, at the end of the day, if it's not a good product, people aren't going to buy it and people are going to criticize it. You're in the gaming industry. You should know that this is going to happen. You don't just get pats on the back because you tried your best. You need to produce something that's actually good. And on top of that, the part that's really crazy is the part where he basically throws other members of the industry under the bus. He tries to single them out and say, if you're agreeing with these nasty gamers, you're just as bad as them, and you're a non-decent human being. I mean, imagine being the colleague of someone like this who dares to criticize very apparently bad things in the industry just to be called a non-decent human being by Stevie here. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous. And this whole talk about we need to uplift each other and come together. Well, first of all, this is about as divisive of a post as you can possibly make. It's divisive against gamers. It's divisive against members of the industry. But on top of that, we know what inclusion and coming together looks like for companies like Ubisoft. It's their own version, right? We see from their own website, the first thing they want you to know about their company is that they create games and experiences that push representation and embed diversity and inclusion into everything they do. Meanwhile, here's a recent example of something that contradicts that. We have that mentorship program that people have been talking about, where basically they bar men from applying, which shockingly turns out to be illegal in most countries, according to Legal Mindset, an actual attorney. Because yeah, who would have thought? Wacky, right? That barring an entire gender from applying to a career opportunity might be against the law in a lot of countries. I know that is a wacky, shocking thing to behold. But yeah, that's one of many disasters going on, and that post by that monetization director is absolutely tone deaf and against any interest of the company, which ironically is seeing a little bit of a boost. So here's the last year at Ubisoft. You've seen this graph probably a million times with their stock. Big drop all year, hitting an all-time low recently in the entire history of the company. But then, some life. What's this? A little jolt in the stock price here. Well, it comes from a buyout. So basically there is a proposed buyout, and now we've seen a 30% stock increase over the past 24 hours. You can see this big jump right here. Reportedly, this is the biggest jump in the history of their company. That's over 20 or 30 years. And yeah, there are some big things going on. You don't see this as a sign of something positive coming. It's more like the vultures are coming in because they see big changes coming. And this is the headline right here. Tencent, Guillermo family said to consider buyout of Ubisoft. Deliberations come after fall in game developers' share price. So yeah, it's not too surprising to see movement like this. This was inevitable. Like I said earlier in the video, at some point, something has to give. You can only lose so many billions of dollars and just burn through all that money before something major happens. And this has been in process for a while now. We saw this letter that was issued to the board of directors at Ubisoft, where basically a group of their shareholders gave out some options. And one of those pairs of options was to either A, sell the company, or B, make the company private. And it seems like Ubisoft might be doing both. And there was even more pressure mounted onto Ubisoft thanks to this headline from about a week ago, where a Ubisoft activist investor said it has the support of 10% of the shareholders in the whole management tussle here, where under French minority law, if they get a certain percentage of the shareholders to get on board, they can force the sale of the company. And I think at this point, Ubisoft is starting to see the end, or at least a forced end, or some big decision that's going to be forced on them, like selling the company. And they are starting to consider this option that probably they shook their head at for a long time and thought, no way would it ever come to this. Well, I think they finally have reached the end, where something major like this has to happen, where Tencent, of all companies, is going to come in and basically try to save them by not only grouping up with them, but also making the company private as a part of this partnership in a desperate attempt to save this company. Because like I said, how much further can you go down at this point if you're Ubisoft? And it gets even worse. So there's some predictions about what would happen if this partnership was made, if this buyout did happen. According to Insider Gaming, they're making predictions that we might see as much as a 30% to 40% layoff of their employees. So looking at Ubisoft's own website, they have 20,000 employees. So you'd be looking at 6,000 to 8,000 employees being laid off. That is insane to think about when it seems like they're already stretched thin. Like, despite having such an enormous amount of workers and so many assets, it seems like they're stretched thin all the time, including with Assassin's Creed Shadows. And according to that insider, they feel like they don't even have enough resources to finish that game in time for February because it's being used for other games that they're working on for the upcoming year. But yeah, to lose that much of their company, especially after a big buyout like that, things are going to be chaotic, very chaotic. And especially, like, what additional impact will that have on games like Assassin's Creed Shadows and other upcoming titles for 2025? But just looking at this website, like, it all just makes sense, doesn't it? Like, this is just something I noticed too, like right now, 90 nationalities and 65 spoken languages. Although we all speak Ubi. Ugh, they are just insufferable. But yeah, Ubisoft is in huge trouble. I think nobody is surprised by these events. It was inevitable at this point, but this is truly like, this is the Ubisoft we know is going to be changed forever. There's no other choice at this point. Things have gotten so chaotic, and yeah, the reports are insane, but to be expected at this point. I mean, there's nothing that really can shock you with Ubisoft at this point. But for now, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys next time.